Hey y'all, you ever been stuck on a software project where something happens and you really wish you could change it, but there's just nothing you can do? Well, stay tuned because today we're going to talk about how to accept really difficult circumstances on your software project. Hi, I'm Jamie, and at Healthy Software Developer, I want to help you stay calm. I want to help you keep growing and not get stuck in your career and make sure that you have a good work-life balance. About 2 years ago, I was working for a software consulting company, and I was about to start a new project that sounded really exciting. It was going to use a bunch of technology that I really was looking forward to getting a chance to work on. And my boss at that time asked me if I would go out to a client where we were already doing some work, where we'd had some problems, and he told me that it would only take 2 weeks. When I arrived there, however, I found out that that project was a complete mess. One of our junior consultants at that time had went in there and we were supposed to be building them a responsive website. And unfortunately, it seemed like he didn't really understand how to do responsive design, and no one at our company had really fully understood this at the time. And so when I showed up, unfortunately, I realized that there were many, many months worth of work that needed to be done to really fix that project. And so I was really frustrated because I didn't want to be stuck on a project that was really in trouble and really try to rescue it. I'd actually done that many times for my company in the past, and I really wanted this opportunity to work on this new project. So if you've ever been in a situation where you felt stuck somewhat on your software project, or maybe the people you're working with, some of them are really difficult and you don't seem to be able to get through to them, I've just found that over the many years in my career, sometimes we have to just accept really difficult software project circumstances. And so in this video today, I'm going to give you a list of steps that I try to kind of go through that I've learned myself after being really frustrated many times on projects over the years. And I really hope this helps you so that if you get into this situation, you're not stuck and you can get back to just enjoying your career the best you can. So the first thing to do if you find yourself in a situation where you feel like there's some circumstances on your software project that are really difficult to deal with is try to make sure that it's really true that those circumstances are outside your sphere of control. You know, if you've ever read Stephen Covey's really well-known book about the 7 habits of highly effective people, he talks about how there's these 3 different circles sort of that you can, it's an abstraction or a model that you can use to look at your ability to change your circumstances or influence people. And most people have, myself included, a really small circle of control. These are the things that we can actually control ourselves. And on most software projects, really all we can control are, you know, the how good of a job that we do and how we present ourselves and maybe the code that we write. But everything else on the project, a lot of those things are outside of our control. Now, some of those things might be in our sphere or our circle of influence, which is a little bit bigger. And these might be things that we can't control, but we can actually have an influence on them. An example might be if you have a really good relationship with another developer on your team, or maybe the product manager, or if you're a consultant like I've been for many years, your client, you might use that relationship to try to influence that person if you find you're in a difficult situation and you have some circumstances that you don't like on your project. But outside of those 2 circles, there's really the sphere of things that are completely outside of your control and outside of your influence. And that's what this video is about. This is about if something happens on your software project and you really think about it and you realize, I can't control this and I can't even influence it, what do? I've been in this situation so many times and I get really pissed off and frustrated sometimes, and I'll take it out on other people, or I'll, engage in self-destructive behavior. And so over the years, I've come up with some ways to cope, but the first thing you really need to do is just get really clear on, can I even control this? Because if you can't, and you can't even influence it, you have to come to a place of acceptance. So the second thing I try to do when I find myself in the situation where I realize something on my software project is just totally outside of my control or influence is I try to think about how does it make me feel when I think about this thing that frustrates me? An example might be if you have a really difficult coworker, or you have maybe a manager or a boss who's really hard to work with, and you're just not in a situation where you can quickly get out of the situation. I try to think about, okay, what am I feeling? And usually what I start to feel are things like I feel maybe insignificant, like I'm not worth as much as I should be, or I start to feel not listened to, or I might just feel angry or depressed. But getting clear on how you feel is really important. Once you're clear on how you feel, the second thing that I try to do is think about, is it worth it for me to spend the energy feeling like this? If you're feeling angry, for example, being angry, you probably know this, takes a lot of energy. You know, if you actually burn calories and you expend energy, whether it's mental or physical, when you're angry and when you're holding something inside that you're frustrated about. So I try to think about, okay, I know I'm really upset about this right now. It really frustrates me, the situation. I want to lash out and I want to try to change things, but I've realized I really can't. And one thing that I used to do, I've talked about this in other videos, is I would just vent on people, or I would go home and I would find things to do to escape, but I really would still be thinking about the problem. But if you don't do that, those unhealthy things, and you really want to just accept the circumstance, one of the best things you can do is just kind of think about, is it worth it for me to keep spending energy feeling angry or depressed or frustrated, or, basically catastrophizing, thinking I'm going to think of the worst possible output that might happen, or outcome rather, from this circumstance that I can't control, and then put my mind on it and get upset. And if you get to the point where you're able to say, no, I don't want to actually spend that energy, that's really good, because then you can go to the next step. And the next step to really accepting your circumstances, if you're on a software project and something's really hard, there's some circumstances that are really frustrating you, is really, I try to think, okay, just because I'm accepting this and saying, this is something I can't change, this is something I can't do anything about, and I'm going to try to let go of it, it doesn't mean that me accepting it defines me. So an example of this is I've been on software projects where I'll want a technology decision to go a certain way, and I'll think it's best for the team, but I'll maybe, whether I'm a consultant or I'm just a developer on a team, or I'm helping a product manager or something like that, I'll try to influence people. I'll try to really work well with people, like I've talked about in many of my videos, to try to build a relationship with them so that they want to do it too and can see what's in it for them. But if I get to a point where I can't really do that, I have to ultimately just realize that doesn't mean I'm saying that this decision I disagree with, that I'm going to now accept, is okay. And it also doesn't define me as a person. Just because, let's say, you have to work overtime for a while and you feel frustrated about it, or in my case, the story I told at the beginning of the video, I'm put on a project and I really don't want to be on that project, and I found out the circumstances are much worse than maybe I thought they were going to be coming in. That doesn't mean that I personally have done anything wrong, or that I'm saying that this is the worth I place on myself. So if you can get to a point where you don't define yourself by your accepting something, and you don't look at it as you're condoning something you disagree with, I think without doing that, you might try to fool yourself that you're accepting something, but it's not really going to happen. The next thing I often do when I'm in this situation is I try to kind of close my eyes, or just mentally picture myself in the situation where I would normally get upset because of this circumstance. So, for example, if I've got a boss that I'm working for that I've got a really difficult relationship with, and they keep asking me to do things that frustrate me, and I've done a lot of things to try to fix the situation. Maybe I've thought about getting a new job, but I just can't at that time. And I'm coming to a place where I'm realizing I have to accept those circumstances. I try to picture myself in that situation and try to think about how I normally would react, and try to imagine myself reacting differently. So instead of me, maybe my boss or this difficult client or somebody asking me to do something, where I usually, let's say, would get angry. And maybe I don't even get angry at the person. Maybe I hold that anger inside. Instead, I try to think when that person says that to me or asks that of me, or maybe they do something on, with the code or something that I really don't like, I'm just going to be calm about it. I'm not going to let it define me. I'm not going to let it bother me, because just because somebody else is doing something that I don't like doesn't have to have that emotional reaction on me. I actually can choose how I want to respond to it. And that's really the next step, which is just to develop the ability to kind of picture yourself letting go. Just having those difficult circumstances happen to you and completely detaching yourself from the feeling that you have any control, because you've hopefully realized, if you did the second step, that you don't. The next thing I like to do is what I call an anxiety audit, which is if I know I'm going to have to deal with a really difficult situation on my software project, and I'm going to have to accept something that I really don't want to, it's going to be a lot harder for me to do that if I'm already extra stressed or anxious. I talked about in one of my other videos about how caffeine can affect your stress levels. Also, there's many other things. If you're not ever exercising, you don't need to work out all the time, but if you're never exercising, that'll really build up a lot of stress if you're not sleeping well. But I try to just think, okay, what's my lifestyle like right now? Am I overextending myself maybe on the project? Am I working overtime? Am I, falling into almost like a control freak workaholic type of a behavior? And I have had this happen so many times to me, I can't even count on my career, but more often earlier in it, before I became a consultant. Do an anxiety audit and just think, okay, am I doing anything at work during the day or when I come home after work that's causing anxiety or stress that's not because of circumstances, that's something that I actually can control? And see if maybe there's some changes that you can make, and try to just change, maybe one at a time. I've found if I try to change too many things in my life or on my project at one time, the chance of being successful goes way down. But see if there's something that you might be doing that's causing stress or anxiety, and just ask yourself, could I maybe find a healthier way to eliminate those things so I can accept this difficult circumstance that I really don't maybe want to? And the last thing I think that really helps when you're in a situation where you're trying to just come to a place of acceptance about something really difficult on your software project is to focus that energy that you would normally spend worrying about the thing that you can't change on the things that you can change. So when I was on that project I talked about at the beginning of the video, and I realized, you know what, I'm on this project that I'm not really thrilled about. I'm cleaning up essentially a large project that was done improperly. I ended up having to completely redesign all the user interface and the back end. It wasn't just the user interface, even though that was what the client had noticed wasn't, responsive, didn't work on the web. When I found myself in that situation and I was able to finally come to a place of acceptance and had kind of followed the things I talked about earlier in the video, I then just decided, well, I'm going to put all my energy that I normally would spend being frustrated about this, just doing a really good job on the user interface and trying to show the client, in this case, I was on a consulting engagement, that I was going to fix their problem. Even if I couldn't fix everything right away, I took, the first web page, for example, this was just a web application, and I went completely through it, redesigned it, got it to work exactly to the original screen designs, even though I had to be really meticulous about it. It took me a really long time. It ended up taking me actually almost 2 weeks just to do one screen because it was really sophisticated. And that was kind of what my boss on the project at the consulting company thought it would take to fix the whole project. But once I was able to show that to the client, they were really happy. I mean, they were really like, okay, you guys gave us somebody who can actually, my consulting company gave us somebody who can actually fix this. And so, we had kind of repaired the relationship. They saw some hope. And then I just continued working on all the additional pages. And from then on, my relationship with that client was really good. They trusted me a lot. They were super thankful that I was there. And so because of that, that helped me have a way better attitude about the situation I was in. I actually ended up being on that project for, I think, almost 4 months to fix what had went wrong. But that client never complained that I was there. And actually, once I finished that project for them, they brought me out for other work that was stuff I did want to do. So have you ever found yourself in a situation where things are happening on your software project and you just can't control them, but you'd really like to just accept the circumstances so you don't waste time and energy on it? Leave me some comments below. If you're new to my YouTube channel, please subscribe and click the notification icon. You'll actually be notified every time I release a new video. And if you'd like, you can also listen to this as a podcast on Google Play, Stitcher, SoundCloud, or iTunes. So until next time, thanks.